Indian mythology often brings us tales of several wise men and women, many of who were able rulers and administrators. These characters rose to the helm of their lives and careers, creating an indelible mark in the history and culture of the land. However, had just one small failing or the other, which eventually emerged as the root cause for their fall from the heights of success to the depths of despair and finally decay. Such is the story of the mighty Ravana, the legendary ruler of the Lanka. Ravana was born to a great sage named Vishrava and his wife Kaikeyi, who was a Daitya princess. The word Ravana means roaring. It is the opposite of Visravana, which means to hear clearly. Both Ravana and Visravana are the sons of Vishravas. Besides this name, Ravana is also addressed by other names such as Dasanana, Ravula, Lankeshwara, Lankeshwaran, Dasis Ravana, Dasis Saktivi, etc. The life story of Ravana is truly inspiring. He was a devout follower of Lord Shiva. He was one of the most powerful beings and rulers of all times. Known for his wisdom, strength, and control over the gods, demons, and human beings alike. He is believed to have ruled over the city of Lanka for several hundred years prior to the emergence of the Ramayana. Yet, the Valmiki Ramayana portrays the demon king in a rather negative light, as a powerful tyrant who committed evil deeds and many a times held the gods at ransom. In the classic version of the epic, he is despised for kidnapping Sita, Rama's wife. This he did in order to claim vengeance on Rama and his brother Lakshmana, for they have cut off his sister Shurpanaka's nose. Let us now delve deep into the story of Ravana and know more about his powerful rules and lifetime. Ravana is often portrayed with 10 heads. These 10 heads symbolize his vast knowledge. They represent his mastery over the 4 Vedas and the 6 Shastras. He was extremely wise, powerful, and ambitious as well. His major goal was to dominate the Devas and gain full control over the entire universe. It is believed that he had the possession of the nectar of immortality, which he carefully stored within his belly. This was a boon that he had received from Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe. According to this boon, he could have vanquished only and only if someone managed to pierce through his belly and destroy the nectar lying within it. Ravana, though a Rakshasa, was one of the most devout followers of Lord Shiva. He was also a favorite bhakt of Shiva and had received several boons from the Lord himself. Ravana, however, was also highly egoistic and hence harbored a secret desire to subdue Shiva himself. Knowing that this negative streak existed in him, Mahadeva decided to teach him a lesson. One day, Ravana decided to go to Shiva's abode, Mount Kailash. The story goes that Ravana, on the orders of his mother, went to Kailash to bring the mountain to Sri Lanka. He was unable to cross the mountain with his Pushpaka Vimana. So, Shiva's vehicle, Nandi the bull, warned him that he was restricted entry into the region as Shiva and his consort Parvati were enjoying their time together there. Angered by Nandi's attitude, he mocked the bull and decided to take the mountain by force. He placed his arms and 10 heads under the mountain and proceeded to lift it. Shiva and Parvati started feeling the tremors and decided to investigate the cause of the shaking. Incensed by Ravana's arrogance, Shiva put his toe down on the ground. This pressure caused the mountain to come down on Ravana, trapping him beneath it. Only then did Ravana sense the real danger. He started screaming for help and begged Shiva's forgiveness. Understanding the supreme power of Shiva, Ravana decided that he had to appease him somehow, some way or the other, if he wanted to survive. He immediately started chanting and singing the praises of his Lord. He cut off one of his heads to make a veena, a musical instrument, out of it. He then tore out his chest with his own hands, pulled out his tendons and intestines, made strings out of them, and connected it with his head, and used the musical instrument to accompany his melodious singing. Losing himself in the melody, Shiva for a moment relented, released his toe from the ground. In that instant, Ravana scrambled out from under the mountain. Realizing his great mistake, he fell at the Lord's feet and shed tears of remorse and repentance. Pleased with his greatest bhakt's transformation, Shiva blessed him and asked him to head back to Lanka. As an ancient instrument, Ravana Hatha is said to have evoked from this story of Ravana playing the veena. Legend has it that Hanuman picked up this instrument and brought it back to North India after the end of the Rama-Ravana war. Incidentally, this instrument is still being played in Rajasthan, India. It is also quite popularly known in the Middle East and parts of Europe. Ravana was an asura, a demon, who was born into a Devagana category. His grandfather, sage Pulatsya, was one of the 10 Prajapatis or the Mahan Saptarishis of Brahma. This technically makes him the great grandson of Lord Brahma himself. Sage Pulatsya was also one of the Saptarishis or the 7 great sages. Ravana thus came from a very illustrious family. His siblings including Vibhishan, Kumbhakarna, Ahiravan, Kubera and his stepbrother was Kubera. Lanka had been built by Vishwakarma, the celestial architect. Ravana demanded the city from Kubera, threatening to take it by force. Kubera discussed the matter with Vishravas, who urged him to give him to his half-brother's demand. Thus, Kubera gave away Lanka to Ravana and went off to the Himalayas. Though Ravana seized Lanka, he was a good and benevolent administrator. His rule was wise and made sure that he kept his subjects happy at all times. Lanka flourished, in fact, during his rule. Eventually, Ravana proceeded to wage war against the humans and conquer the humans, the Devas and the Asura kingdoms with his arrogance. The Ramayana states that Ravana was killed by Lord Rama when the latter waged a war to avenge the demon's act of kidnapping his wife Sita. Ravana's downfall started with a series of events. Right from the time of Sita's Swayamvara, the moment he set his eyes on this beautiful and radiant damsel that was Sita, he could not think of nothing else. His wife Mandodari was very beautiful woman. Besides her, he had an entire harem of the world's most attractive women married to him. Yet, he wanted to make Sita his own. Sita's father, Janaka, who was the king of Mithila, organized a grand Swayamvara ceremony for his daughter. He invited kings and princes from far and wide to participate in the ceremony. He placed a mighty bow inside one of the mandaps and announced that he would give his daughter away in marriage only to the one who would be able to lift this bow and string it. This bow was not ordinary. It was blessed by Lord Shiva himself. Hence, only someone truly special would be able to fulfill Janaka's condition. Several participants tried to lift the bow but failed. It was Ravana's turn then. The egoistic demon king was confident that he would be able to lift it effortlessly. He casually sauntered towards it and told everyone present that he would be able to lift it with his left hand. However, he was in for a disappointment. The bow refused to budge. He then tried to lift it with both hands and failed again. This continued for several attempts. He finally had to accept defeat and walk back to his place in the audience. Rama and Lakshmana were also invited to the ceremony. Rama walked up to the bow, saluted it, prayed to it, and then lifted the bow in one ease and fulfilled the condition, after which the bow broke into two. Sita walked up to Rama and garlanded him with Varmala. The wedding was celebrated with great pomp and show. In the meantime, Ravana, who was already bitter about losing the competition, was also enraged that Sita wedded Rama instead of him. He swore to kill him someday. Surpanakha is another very important negative character in the Valmiki Ramayana. She was the sister of Ravana. In the Ramayana, she is described as being a Viropi, an ugly and someone with contorted features, with a huge pot belly and cross-eyed, with graphic voice and thinning hair. She saw Rama while he was roaming in the forest of Panchavati during his Vanavasa. She was instantly smitten by his looks and physique and proceeded to make advances on him. She approached him and expressed her desire to marry him. Rama refused, saying that he was already married to Sita and had also taken an Ekapatni Vrata, which means the vow to wed once only. He asked her to go politely. Though unwilling, she approached Lakshmana and asked him if he would marry her. he too reacted in a similar fashion and said that he would never be able to see her as his wife. Surpanakha then kept beseeching both brothers, and they kept refusing her advances and also made no further inclination to spend in her company. Enraged and humiliated, she proceeded to attack Sita. However, she was stopped by Lakshmana, who cut off her nose by accident and ordered her to go back to Lanka. Surpanakha first went to her brother Kara, who told him about the incident. He, along with an entire army, tried to attack the princes Rama and Lakshmana. However, they were routed at the hands of Rama and Lakshmana. She then went to Ravana, asking him to avenge her plight. Angered to see his favorite sister suffering, Ravana decided that he would abduct Sita to make Rama and Lakshmana realize their mistake. Ravana asks his uncle Maricha to assume the form of a golden deer and walk up to where Rama and Sita were living, so as to entice her. Maricha did as he was told. He took the form of a beautiful and radiant golden deer. Sita was immediately attracted to the animal and requested Rama to pursue it and bring it to her. Though he had misgivings about this, Rama decided to fulfill his wife's desire. As Rama pursued the deer, it ran further and farther into the forest, misleading him away from his camp. When Rama finally caught up with it and shot an arrow at the golden deer, called out to Lakshmana asking for help in Rama's voice. Maricha then took his original form before succumbing to its injury. Shocked to hear her husband's voice, Sita ordered Lakshmana to go in search of her husband who might have been in danger. The latter, however, was unwilling to leave her alone there. Then Sita insisted that he go help his brother. He requested her to stay indoors and not come out. Lakshmana then took an arrow, said a mantra, and drew a protective line in the sand all the way around the house. He assured her that she would completely be safe as long as she stayed inside the Lakshmana Rekha. He then proceeded in search of his brother. As soon as Lakshmana departed, Ravana, in the guise of an old Brahmin, came to the hermitage, begging for alms. Sita was in a dilemma. She could not refuse alms, and yet she was ordered to stay within the Lakshmana Rekha. She asked him to come inside to take the alms, but he adamantly refused, asking her to come to him instead. And this went on for a while. Eventually, Sita gave in and crossed the Lakshmana Rekha, offered the food to him. Then Ravana immediately took his original form and, scooping the entire chunk of earth that Sita was standing on, carried her away in his Pushpaka Vimana and proceeded to Lanka. Once there, he brought her to Ashoka Vatika, a beautiful garden with idyllic surroundings. There, he held her hostage, guarded by several Rakshasis. Though he desired Sita, he decided not to take her by force. Instead, he intended to keep her captive till the time that she had changed her mind and was willing to marry him. When Rama came to know about this, he decided that he would fight Ravana like a warrior and defeat him in the battle and then return to Ayodhya with Sita. The Yuddha Kanda, also known as the Lanka Kanda, describes in detail the war between the armies of Rama and Ravana. Rama's Vanarasena helped him build a bridge to Lanka, using which they crossed to the borders of the country. A lengthy war ensued. Ravana's son Indrajit hurled a powerful astra at Lakshmana, which seriously injured Lakshmana. Hanuman then rushed to Mount Sumeru of the Himalayas to find the Sanjeevani herb, which would bring him back to life. Not wanting to waste time searching for the particular herb, Hanuman lifted the Sumeru and brought it to Lanka. The herb brought a dying Lakshmana back to life, and the brothers resumed fighting Ravana's army. The war claimed many lives and created much damage on both sides. The mighty Indrajit was also killed in the war. Finally, Rama and Ravana came face to face. Rama kept hurling arrows after arrows at the Rakshasa Ravana to no avail. They merely brushed past the demon, causing no damage whatsoever. Rama grew anxious. The gods too, who were watching from heaven, started growing tense, wondering how to curb the 10-headed Ravana. The Devas approached Indra then, who thought for a while, and then he sent his celestial chariot driven by Matali. He was sure that his charioteer would help Rama. Rama jumped into the chariot and started firing more astras at Ravana. Matali instructed Rama to use all the powerful Brahmastra, the ultimate weapon which definitely destroyed the ruler of Lanka. He also reminded Rama and Ravana that he had to be struck below the navel in the location of the Amrit. Only then would he be able to kill Ravana. Rama evoked the Brahmastra, chanted this name of Parvati, Shiva's consort, and aimed the astra at Ravana's navel. The potent weapon pierced through Ravana's body, making him stumble and fall to his death eventually. This signaled the end of the war between Rama and Ravana. Dying at the hands of Lord Rama automatically bestowed moksha upon Ravana, so he immediately ascended to heaven. He was, after all, a great scholar and a wise and pious person. Though he had committed certain sins, it was only because it was his asura guna that showed up at that time. Also, he had died fighting valiantly on the battlefield as a hero. Hence, Ravana was given a befitting funeral, receiving all the respects of a true warrior should. The gods, however, rejoiced Ravana's death and showered flowers from heaven. Rama approached Vibhishana and thanked him for all his help both before and during the war. He then announced Vibhishana as the king of Lanka, releasing Sita from captivity, and proceeded back to Ayodhya along with his brother Hanuman and the rest of his army. The Ramayana portrays Ravana in a negative role as the main antagonist in the epic. However, the facts remain that he was a great man, worthy of the highest respect any living being could get.